So, hello everyone. We have discussed two important questions from the previous year UPSC question papers. But when I have gone through the video, in the later part of the video, I have seen that the screen was not visible. So, quickly, I will describe or I will explain the two questions. After that, we will go to the new ones. So past two questions we will quickly go through, and after that we will go to the new questions. The first question was, since the decade of 1920s, the national movement acquired various ideological strands and thereby expanded its social base. Discuss 2020 Daisil. So the 1920 was a watershed decade in the history of Indian national movement. The events and changes which manifested in the decade were seminal as they remarkably changed the course of the freedom cycle. So সহজ অৰ্থত ক'বলৈ গ'লে 1920 আমি এটা watershed decade বুলি ক'ব পাৰোঁ, কাৰণ ইয়াৰ পাছত যিখিনি চেঞ্জ আহিছিল ফ্ৰীডম ষ্ট্ৰাগলত সেইখিনি remarkable changes হয়. Ideologies that influenced the freedom cycle struggle were first one is Gandhian. Mahatma Gandhi introduced the new technique of ahimsa, that is non-violence and non-cooperation, to the movement. And the non-cooperation movement in the early 1920s was the first true nationwide movement. Then after that, communism came. Communism is we all know what is communism, a powerful left-wing group developed in India in the late 1920s and 1930s. The stream of the struggle for independence and that of the struggle for social and economic emancipation of the suppressed began to come together. So this line is very important. The theme of the struggle for the independence and that of the struggle for social and economic emancipation of the suppressed began to come together. কাৰণ কমিউনিজিমৰ কথা যেতিয়া আহে আমি গম পাওঁ তাত আমি বিশেষকৈ যিখিনি society যিখিনি লোকক সাপ্ৰেছ কৰি থোৱা হৈছে তেওঁলোক আচলতে আগবাঢ়ি আহে সেই societyৰ সেই মানে যিটো ruling class তাৰ against. So the establishment of organizations like Communist Party of India 1925, All India Trade Union Congress 1920, and Workers' Peasant Parties 1927 are some of the few important, what I can say, that we have few organizations who actually fueled this communist movement. And they extended the reach of communism throughout the India among workers and peasants. Then communalism post 1922, communalism reared its ugly head, and the country was repeatedly plunged into communal riots. Right. So many communal riots took place because of this communalism. All communal organizations were revived and fresh ones were funded. The Muslim League and the Hindu Mahasabha began to further their vested interests. Then come revolutionary activism. The failure of peaceful mediums had frustrated the youth. They began to mobilize with secret organizations like Hindustan organizations. Let me give some space here. It is not visible. Okay. Like Hindustan Republic Association and Hindustan Social Republic Association. Hindustan Republic Association 1923, Hindustan Socialist Republic Association 1928. Ram Prasad Bismil, Asfaqullah Khan, Chandrasekhar Azad, Bhagat Singh, among others, actively engaged in anti-colonial activities and encouraged youth to join the cause. Expansion of the social base. Gandhi, for the first time, made the nation movement a mass movement. People from every background began to participate in the protests. Peasants like Eka movement, tribals, Alluri Sitaram Raju vigorously engaged in challenging authority of the British rule. So people from different community came forward to participate in this national movement against the British. Right. Then due to this new awakening, the suppressed social classes asserted their rights in the The suppressed social classes asserted their rights in society. Movements like Vaikom Satyagraha of Kerala 1924, Adi Dharma movement of Punjab 1926 were the outcome of the aspiration of the suppressed and Dalits. Women no longer remained confined into their houses, and freedom fighters such as Rajkumari Amrit Kaur. Rajkumari Amrit Kaur, Sucheta Kriplani, Aruna Asaf Ali actively participated and shaped the national movement. Earlier, the freedom struggle with a narrow social base was largely confined to the middle class and elites. But the 1920s witnessed the expansion of the social base, and people from every stratum began to associate themselves with it through different ideological dimension. Ideology বিলাক বেলেগ বেলেগ হ'ব পাৰে, কিন্তু আমি দেখিবলৈ পালো যে societyৰ বিভিন্ন মানে খাপৰ মানুহে বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ আইডিঅলজি থকা মানুহ আগবাঢ়ি আহি পেলাই পাৰ্টিচিপেট কৰে, right? The participation of masses made the struggle more vibrant and inclusive. Our second question to us is, bring out the constructive programs of Mahatma Gandhi during non-cooperation movement and civil disobedience movement. Gandhi's comprehensive plan of national regeneration, which he named the constructive program, aimed at establishing social order based on truth and non-violence. Gandhi believed that foreign domination in India lived and prospered because of our own negligence towards the fundamental duties as a nation. Collective fulfillment of these duties can be referred to as the constructive program. Constructive programs during non-cooperation movement and civil disobedience movement are: first, communal unity. According to Gandhi, communal unity does not merely mean political unity, but should be an unbreakable unity of hearts. This was achieved during the Lucknow Pact of 1916, whereby both the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League joined hands against British rule. Then removal of untouchability. Gandhi held that untouchability was a blot and a curse upon Indian society. So Gandhi held that untouchability was a blot and curse upon Indian society. He endeavored to abolish this evil. He founded Harijan Sevak Sangh for the abolition of untouchability in 1932 after his Pune Act. Then khadi making. Gandhi presented khadi as a symbol of nationalism, economic freedom, equality, and self-reliance. Khadi takes the central place in the upliftment of the village economy, which eventually lead to the attainment of Gram Swaraj. Then new or basic education. Gandhi's concept of new education implies that the nature, society, and crafts are huge mediums of education. So he believed that nature, society, and crafts are the mediums of education. According to him, true education is that which draws out and stimulates the spiritual, intellectual, and physical. Spiritual, intellectual, and physical features of the children. The education ought to be for them a kind of insurance against unemployment. Whenever these three together came to education, which are those three? Spiritual, intellectual, and physical properties. Then it is an insurance against unemployment. Means unemployment cannot occur if all these three are coming to the educations. Upliftment of women. In his mission of Swaraj, Gandhi needed the cooperation of women, kisans, and laborers and students. It was only due to Gandhi's approach that women come out of their houses for the first time in history and participated in the Indian political struggle. Right. So we have seen that many constructive works being taken by Mahatma Gandhi during this non-cooperation movement and civil disobedience movement. Integration of Indian society was perhaps more difficult than the achievement of freedom, because in this process what happened, there existed a possibility of conflict between groups and classes of our own people. কাৰণ আমাৰ ভাৰততো বেলেগ ধৰণৰ গ্ৰুপছ, বেলেগ ধৰণৰ ক্লাছৰ মানুহ থাকে। যেতিয়া গোটেইখিনি আগবাঢ়ি আহিছিল তেতিয়া বহুত পচিবিলিটি আছিল যে এনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ কনফ্লিক্ট হোৱাটো, যিটো বন্ধ হোৱাটো। Problem is going on. So let me share the screen again. Otherwise, problem like yesterday happens again. Yeah, sharing the screen. I hope it is visible now. Okay, I think it is visible. Hello? Yes. Now, first question of today's class is that to what extent did the moderates prepare a base for the wider freedom movement? To what extent did the role of the moderates prepare a base for the wider freedom movement? Comment 2021 আহিছিল কুৱেশ্যনত সুধিছে যে moderates বিলাকে ফ্ৰীডম মুভমেণ্টত এটা ৱাইডাৰ ফ্ৰীডম মুভমেণ্টৰ কাৰণে বেছ বনাইছিল তাত তেওঁলোকৰ কি ৰোল আছিল তেওঁলোকৰ কিবা ৰোল আছিল নেকি এই ৱাইডাৰ ফ্ৰীডম মুভমেণ্টটোত যিটো এটা বেছ বনোৱাত right so actually question is asking about the role of the moderates in freedom movement now the first phase of the existence of Congress is known as the moderate phase 1885 পৰা 1955 sorry 1885 পৰা 1905 যিটো আমাৰ এৰা হেতুক আমি মডাৰেটৰ এৰা বুলি কওঁ yes or no the first phase of the existence of the Congress is known as the moderate phase 1885 to 1905 during this the Congress worked for limited objectives and concentrated more on building up its organization the leaders like Dadabhai Naoroji, okay, Dadabhai Naoroji, P.N. Mehta, D. Vacha, W.C. Banerjee, S.N. Banerjee, Gopal Krishna Gokhale were staunch believers in liberalism and moderate politics and came to be labeled as moderate. So, hetu homoyor kejonman moderate to naam hol Dadabhai Naoroji, P.N. Mehta, W.C. Banerjee, S.N. Banerjee, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, and they are the believers of, or you can say the staunch believers in liberalism and moderate politics and came to be labeled as moderates. তেওঁলোক moderates বুলি আখ্যা দিয়া হৈছিল, right? The main objective of the moderates was to achieve self-government within the British Empire. This line for this question is very important. Is a moderate bilakor aim to ki asil. The objective to ki asil. Objective to asil. The main objective of the moderates was to achieve self-government within the British Empire. তেওঁলোকে কেতিয়াও ব্ৰিটিছৰ পৰা সম্পূৰ্ণ আজাদী সম্পূৰ্ণ ফ্ৰীডম বিচৰা নাছিল তেওঁলোকে বিচাৰিছিল যে সেলফ গভৰ্নমেন্ট থাকিব ব্ৰিটিছ এম্পায়াৰৰ আন্ডাৰতে so the main objective of the moderates was to achieve self-government within the British Empire. They believe in patience and reconciliations rather than in violence and confrontation, thus relying on constitutional and peaceful methods in order to achieve their aims. So they never believe in violent or this kind of confrontation. Okay, they never believe on them. They believe on what? Patience and reconciliation. Patience and reconciliations. So constitutional and peaceful methods are the ones by which they want to achieve their aims of having self-government under British Empire. They organize annual sessions with delegates participating from all parts of the country. After the discussion, resolutions were adopted which were forwarded to the government for its information and appropriate actions. They organize annual sessions where participants from all parts of India came and joined. Then after the discussion, what happens? They adopted some resolution and they forwarded them to British India, right? Means British, they forwarded them to the government, British government, for their for it means British government's information and appropriate action. So they totally believe on this kind of moderate method, means the constitutional methods, right? Now, what are their success? Let's discuss about them. Success and contribution of moderates. They represented the most progressive forces of the time. সেইটো সময়ত তেওঁলোককে মানে সেইটো সময় যদি চোৱা যায় they were the most progressive forces of the time. They represented the most progressive forces of the time. They were able to create a wide national awakening of all Indians having common interests and the need to rally around a common program against a common enemy, and above all, the feeling of belongings to one nation. The first thing we have got that the first success is that they represented the most progressive forces of that time. And second is that they were able to create a wide national awakening of all the Indians who have the common interests and need to rally around a common program against a common enemy. So what happened? The feeling of belonging to one nation now came or arose, because before that there was no such concept of one nation, right? We know about that. But after these things, the concept of one nations means coming in what I can say, coming to the minds of all the Indians, right? They train people in political works and popularize modernized ideas. Then they expose the basically exploitative character of colonial rule and thus undermining its moral foundations. So they expose the basically exploitative character of colonial rule. তেওঁলোকে colonial ruler যিখিনি exploitative character আছিলে সেইখিনি expose কৰিছিলে, right? Thus undermining its moral foundations. Their political work was based on hard realities and not on shallow sentiments and religions, etc. They never cared for religions, or they never cared for shallow sentiments. They always tried to work on hard realities, right? Their political work was based on hard realities. So religions, sentiments এইবিলাকক বেছি গুৰুত্ব দিয়া নাছিল, তেওঁলোকে hard realities ওপৰত political work কৰিছিল. They were able to establish the basic political truth that India should be ruled in the interests of Indians. This is a very important right. They were able to establish the basic political truth that India should be ruled in the interests of Indians. They were able to establish the basic political truth that India should be ruled in the interest of Indians. They created a solid base for more vigorous, militant, and mass-based national movement in the years that follows. So এটা বেস তেওঁলোকে মানে এষ্টাব্লিছ কৰিবলৈ সক্ষম হৈছিল, যা সেই বেছটোৰ ওপৰত ভিত্তি কৰি পেলাই এটা ডাঙৰ এটা মিলিটেণ্ট বা এটা মাছ বেছ নেশ্যনেল মুভমেণ্ট আমি আহিবলগীয়া সময়ত দেখা পাওঁ, right? They created a solid base for more vigorous, militant, and mass-based national movement in the years that followed. The early nationalists did a great deal to awaken the national sentiment, even though they could not draw the masses to them and failed to widen their democratic base, the scope of their demands. So, যদিও তেওঁলোকে সফল হোৱা নাছিল, কি সফল হোৱা নাছিল? They did not get success to widen their democratic base, or they did not they could not make the Britishers or British government to accept their demands. And also they could not draw the masses to them, but still they have established that base. They established that base, and they established to create or awaken the national sentiment, right? Moderates wanted to educate people in modern politics, to arouse national and political consciousness, and to create a united public opinion on political questions. So they always wanted to educate people in modern politics, because maximum of the moderates are highly educated. So they have that knowledge of what's are going on around the world, and what are the rights and what are the wrongs, right? So they wanted to educate the other peoples also in the modern politics, and to arouse national and political consciousness, and to create a united public opinion on political questions. And their critics often accuse them for using methods of beggary through prayers and petition. Yes, তেওঁলোকৰ যিটো aim আছিল সেইটো কথা বেলেগ, but তেওঁলোকে এই যে aimটো কৰিবৰ কাৰণে মানে এই aimটো means self government আনিবৰ কাৰণে তেওঁলোকে believe কৰিছিল constitutional way. They believe on the constitutional provisions, right? So that's why they never means adopted some violent confrontation. But the critics, that's why means accuse them of means using the methods of beggary through prayers and petitions, right? However, had they adopted the revolutionary or violent methods, they would have been crushed right in the infancy of the Congress. They created a solid base for more vigorous and militant and mass-based national movement in the following years. The moderates thus were prudent in using the constitutional and peaceful methods to handle the British. যদিও criticsসকলে তেওঁলোকক ভেগাৰী বুলি মানে ভিক্ষাৰী বুলি গণ্য কৰে, কাৰণ তেওঁলোকে prayers and petitioner মাজেদি মানে বা কনষ্টিটিউচনেল প্ৰভিজনৰ থ্ৰুৱেদি তেওঁলোকে নিজৰ ডিমাণ্ডখিনি ব্ৰিটিছ গভৰ্ণমেণ্টৰ আগত ৰাখে। তথাপিও সেইটো সময়ত যদি তেওঁলোকে ভায়োলেণ্ট মেথড ল'লেহেঁতেন তেন্তে হয়তো কংগ্ৰেছ বহুত বেছি আগু নাবাঢ়িলেহেঁতেন। But they actually successfully created a solid base for a more vigorous militant and mass-based national movement in the following years. And thus, moderates were prudent in using the constitutional and peaceful methods to handle the British rule. So this was the question about how or what extent did the role of moderates prepare a base for the wider freedom movement. I hope it is clear. So today aru ami ak nebahu next question to pasot korim. Aji manote hamoru. We'll meet again tomorrow with the next question. Thank you.